A man frightened by his computer, a woman being attacked by a bull, birds crashing to the ground in Mexico, a motorcycle driving without a driver, or a toll booth employee being robbed by a monkey. Sit back on your couch and watch these unusual moments captured on camera. The man you see here was sitting quietly in front of his computer. He was playing his favorite arcade game, while a friend of his was taking a video of him, when suddenly, while he was immersed in the game, almost hypnotized, the image on the screen suddenly changed to reveal a terribly scary monster. You have understood it, of course. It was a bad joke that his famous friend made him. That's why he was so keen to immortalize the scene. The poor man was caught off guard, panicked a lot. He started to scream, and as his only reaction, he smashed the screen with his fist and pierced it violently, while his friend was laughing out loud, enjoying this Machiavellian scene. He then got up in tears and asked his friend why he had done such a thing to him. Because of the unbearable terror that had taken hold of him, the poor young man ended up peeing himself. Eventually, he was able to calm down, but he will never forget this bad move. The good thing about this story is that at least he knows he has a nice punch. This little boy was playing quietly in the living room while his mom was in the kitchen. Suddenly, he decided to go and poke the huge tree that was standing in the corner in preparation for Christmas Eve. Impressed by the tree's multicolored decorations and decorative lights, the little one couldn't resist touching it. Then, by pulling a little too much on the balls of the tree, he immediately made the ladder wobble, which collapsed abruptly on the ground. He then lost all the balls and decorations he had on him, and they scattered on the ground. When he heard the frightening sound of the tree falling, the little boy realized his stupidity and went to huddle on the sofa to naively make his mother believe that he had not touched anything and that the tree had fallen down by itself. Of course, it did not work because the little one was the only one who was present in the living room, therefore the only person who could have touched the tree. He was surely punished for this stupidity and for having lied to his mom. As a result, he had a memorable Christmas that year. You have a dog and you hate taking him out for a walk. Well, it's not really your cup of tea. You wish those boring walks were so much more fun, and since Albert still can't talk, it's going to be a little hard for you. I have the solution for you, and believe me, it's very easy. You just have to think about it, that's all. Do like this man. While walking his dog in front of the driveway of his house, he felt a little bored, and at one point, he decided to start dancing to keep himself busy. The man danced for many minutes in front of his home surveillance camera, letting off steam and shaking his body hilariously. I'm sure while doing this, he was getting laughs and mockery from the neighbors as the man clearly had 2 left feet. Well, you have to make sure your dog is as nice as his and that he'll let you dance to your heart's content. Otherwise, you'll soon regret it. Now go get your dog ready and take him out. He's just waiting for that. You have no more excuses for daily walks. Oh yes, I almost forgot. Get dressed for dancing. A toll collector was working in his booth. He had to do the accounts of the cash register. At the same time, a car stopped at his window. He thought that it had come to pay like all other cars, but it had not. A monkey got out of the car and immediately entered the booth, passing behind the employee who was amused by this unusual situation, without thinking for a second that the animal was obeying its master's orders. Indeed, the monkey first searched for the cash box, and when he found it, he swiped some bills very quickly before escaping and returning to the car. The man didn't realize this until the monkey got out. He had lost money, which he would certainly have to pay back from his own wages. But this will certainly serve as a lesson to him. He will have to move away and the cash register next time. In a restaurant, an employee was preparing an order for a customer. But while she was busy preparing the sandwich, the very angry and hungry customer came to yell at her, claiming that she had taken too long to make the sandwich. The fast food employee did not appreciate being called out and retaliated by shouting at the customer. After a heated discussion that ended in an argument, the employee decided to take revenge on the customer by spitting on her sandwich. An incredible scene that was filmed by another customer. This act, committed under the effect of anger, earned the poor employee to be immediately fired from her job. She managed to ruin her job in a fraction of a second, but it will also allow her to look for a better job elsewhere. On Sunday, May 28, 2017, around 8 p.m., a motorist was in his car on the A4 highway near Maisons Alfort in the Val-de-Marne. The 35-year-old man was on his way home when suddenly he noticed something absolutely mind-blowing on the road. He saw a Harley-Davidson motorcycle driving alone. Yes, alone, without a pilot, along the A4 highway for several kilometers. And not to be seen as a scatterbrain or a person having lost his mind, he wanted to film the scene in order to immortalize it because what was happening in front of his eyes was unbelievable. Dumbfounded by this scene, the driver then posted the video on social networks, and since then, thousands of attempts to explain it have been made from everywhere. Finally, a few days later, the mystery of the ghost bike, as it was called, was solved. It turns out that the driver of the Harley-Davidson was a young man from Nogent. When questioned, he stated that on that famous Sunday, he was driving on the A4 at 90 kilometers per hour towards the capital, and at one point to his right, a car entered the A86. The car hesitated to change direction and then suddenly turned left, crossing the zebra of the road. After that, the driver got on the motorcyclist's lane and tipped him over. Seeing the motorcycle go down, the young man had the reflex to push it forward in order not to be crushed. He then fell dangerously and miraculously avoided another car that was coming on his left. He ended up on the ground with bruises on his leg and arms, while the motorcycle continued on its way for 9 kilometers. It was finally found by the police on the quay of Bercy in Paris after several hours of research. The motorist was bombarded with hateful comments that cried foul, since no one could imagine or explain how a motorcycle could drive for 9 kilometers without a pilot at the controls, without deviating or falling. But fortunately, the words of the rider himself confirmed the veracity of this amazing scene. I can't imagine in what state this motorist went home that day. Witnessing a scene like this is like living a horror scene in real life. One day, a woman decided to borrow her car to go to her mother's house in a nearby town. But since she had just gotten her license, the woman still had a lot of trouble following the rules of the road. When I say a lot of trouble, I don't mean that she didn't know how to respect the essential rules of the road, namely to drive in the right lane. So while driving on the national road, the driver left the regular lane of the road to continue her race on the sidewalk. She continued for several meters without realizing that she was driving on the sidewalk instead of on the pavement. A hilarious scene that was filmed by another motorist who took the opportunity to make fun of the poor woman who was still a novice in driving. Let's just hope she made it home safely that day. In a restaurant, a man was standing setting up his tables, welcoming his lunchtime customers. While he was concentrating on his cutlery, he heard the shrill cry of a woman coming towards him. This one was followed by a huge bull that appeared from nowhere. When the animal appeared in the restaurant, it destroyed everything: tables, chairs, and cutlery, also knocking down the owner of the restaurant and the woman all in a fraction of a second. A real tornado. The bovine left the place victorious, leaving the man and the woman completely buried under the furniture. Fortunately for the owner of the restaurant, he could not welcome customers that day because he had nothing left. He will have to take the bull by the horns now if he wants to reopen as soon as possible. On February 7, 2022, a group of thousands of yellow-headed blackbirds were flying over a small street in the city of Chihuahua, Mexico. These migratory birds had all just arrived from Canada, when suddenly, as strange as it may seem, the whole group of birds literally and brutally crashed, as if an invisible force had grabbed them all together and thrown them to the ground at once. A hallucinating scene that could be filmed by the surveillance cameras of the street. Most of the birds immediately flew away in the air, leaving dozens of others on the ground, all dead because of the brutal and violent collapse. Residents had to alert the authorities to investigate the matter, since the cause of death of some and not others remained very mysterious. According to a statement, it is likely that the birds succumbed to the inhalation of toxic fumes from a heater or an overload of electrical cables. The surviving birds, unfortunately, had to continue their journey without several of their fellow birds. This young woman was sitting in a passenger seat on a train on her way to work. She was accompanied by some of her colleagues, one of whom was sitting behind her. The latter had the idea of annoying her colleague by setting a trap for her, while another colleague was filming with his phone. Since he knew that the woman was wearing a wig, he decided to attach her hair to the train's bar. Then, when the train stopped, the woman suddenly stood up and suddenly, her wig remained attached to the bar. The unfortunate woman ended up without a hair on the stone. A terribly humiliating scene for the poor woman, who still wanted to laugh about it so as not to show her frustration. She will know from now on that her colleagues are not saints. This young woman had an appointment with her boyfriend for Valentine's Day. For the occasion, she had dressed in red and had decided to buy a bouquet of flowers for her boyfriend. But at the last minute, while she was waiting for the subway to go to his place, he called and canceled their appointment without reason. This made our friend a little, or a lot, angry. Carried away by an immeasurable rage, she started to shout, to rage, to spit on the ground. Obviously, her anger was so great that she didn't care a bit what other travelers thought. Given her condition, she must have said some not-so-nice things too. When her anger reached its peak, the injured young woman threw her bouquet of flowers on the ground, abused it, and trashed it. In doing so, she was just taking out her rage on that poor flower bouquet and releasing her negative emotions, despite the fact that everyone was watching the scene. Eventually, she walked away from the subway platform, swallowing her rage, and went home. She may not have had the Valentine's Day she was looking for, but at least she had a good night out. So what do you think of these hilarious sequences? Tell us in the comments which one you liked the most. And if you liked this video, don't forget to put a like, subscribe, and activate the bell to receive all notifications.